That wasn't all President Trump tackled on Twitter this morning. He has more for you. He also had some choice words for LaVar Ball after a CNN interview where he again refused to thank the president. POTUS writing this: it wasn't the White House, it wasn't the State Department, it wasn't Father LaVar's so-called people on the ground in China that got his son out of prison, a long-term prison sentence. It was me. Too bad. LaVar is just a poor man's version of Don King, but without the hair. Just think. LaVar, you could have spent the next 5 to 10 years during Thanksgiving with your son in China, but no NBA contract to support you. But remember, LaVar, shoplifting is not a little thing. It's a really big thing, especially in China. Ungrateful fool. Oh, Stephen A., there's a lot right there. Is Trump right about LaVar?
Well, listen, he's right from the standpoint that there's nothing wrong with saying thank you, but he's incredibly petty. He's insulting. He's unpresidential in terms of the rhetoric that's coming out of his mouth. And not to mention the fact I don't appreciate you calling him an ungrateful fool. You didn't call him an ungrateful father. You called him an ungrateful fool. That's incredibly derogatory. If it were me, I would have came back with something far more incendiary towards the president if he had come at me like that. I can tell you that much. The other thing I think it's important to recognize here is that he's going into details about some things. First of all, you sit there and say a poor man's version of Don King. Well, is that a compliment or not? Because I saw President Trump hugging Don King during the campaign because the boxing promoter was a Trump supporter. And Trump certainly had no problem with Don King. So calling a man a poor man's Don King, is that a compliment without you even knowing it? I would say so, because obviously you had no problems with Don King, so you shouldn't have much of a problem with LaVar Ball. But in the end, what it comes down to is this. There are things that the president just shouldn't be involved in. We all know this. He's supposed to be above this. Going after LaVar Ball, I have been on the record stating that there's I don't care if Trump had just a little to do with it, along with a potpourri of other individuals. The reality is clear. Your son went to another country. He committed a crime, along with 2 other guys from UCLA. By the way, it would be nice to hear us demanding a thank you from the parents of those other 2 individuals, by the way, not just LaVar Ball because his son's LeAngelo. It would be nice. But I would say to you, regardless of all of that, in the end, there's absolutely nothing wrong with showing humility and saying thank you when it's warranted. And in this case, I think Trump is right that it was warranted, but it doesn't negate the fact that the president is being very unpresidential, very petty, in going after LaVar Ball in the manner that he's going after him. It's completely unnecessary. It's childish, but unfortunately, it's nothing new because, as I've said to many supporters of Donald Trump, particularly on right-wing radio and beyond, the man is 71 years old, and on far too many occasions, he's acting like he's 17. I don't get into the politics and the minutia of it, but I believe that the presidency is statesmanship. You are a statesman for this nation. You represent us here and throughout the world. You cannot conduct yourself the way that this president has conducted himself, and this is the latest example of shameful, childish behavior.
I will just chime in on this, and I'll say this as a parent. I think it's wise that you understand that you have an obligation to raise your children. Don't try to raise other people's children. That's a hard enough job alone, just raising your own. And to comment on how people raise their kids, make sure you're doing right in your home. I think this situation was one where obviously all 3 families should have wrote a note and to say thank you for helping us out of this situation. And then it's done. You don't have to speak. I was taught as a young man, when people do things for you in your favor, write them a note. I have 2 little girls, 11 and 12. They write notes. When people do things kind for them, they write notes. They actually sit down with a pen and a piece of paper, and they write that person a note to say thank you. That's how you raise your children. Don't get into this thing while you want to raise someone else's child. Just raise your child right, and things generally work out.